Now, the next part of our service is usually the speaker speaking, but today all of you, or those of you who want to, are going to be doing the speaking. So we're going to begin with Delith, who is going to be speaking about her mother, or mothers, or something on that topic. We invite all of you to join in.
Thank you, Layla, and thank you, Don. That was so beautiful. I could listen to that for a long time. They're very relaxing. Yeah, very beautiful. So it's Mother's Day, and boy, it can bring up so many different feelings, I'm sure, for all of us. I mean, one thing we certainly all have in common is that we all have a mother. And we all have different mothers, and we have Mother Earth, as was mentioned earlier, and all kinds of relationships with our mothers and as mothers, for those of us who are our mothers. And today I was just thinking how much simpler Mother's Day was for thinking about getting a gift for my mom and telling her that I loved her. And I just remember always, for so many years, the tradition was to get her flowers. And towards later on, as I was an adult, you know, the flowers were usually red geraniums, and she just loved it. And she felt so delighted. And it was kind of the one time, you know, more than a birthday or Christmas or any other holiday I might honor her. It was a time when I really felt that she appreciated being recognized, and I think she felt special because it was Mother's Day, and you know, it didn't feel like an obligation to get a card and get flowers. So that's a really happy memory of me for my mom. And you know, clearly our relationships with our mothers change over time, and you know, there's conflict, and there's disappointment, and there's anger, and there's deep love, and you know, it's just such a rich relationship, and it can certainly keep evolving. You know, long after our mothers have passed, you know, many of us have mothers that are still living, and many of us have mothers that have passed. And I noticed that for me, I didn't start thinking about her and her life and what her life meant to her until I was well into my adulthood. You know, I think as a child or a teenager or even a young adult, you know, we're pretty much into our own life. You know, who am I? Who am I becoming? You know, I want to break away from mother. I don't want to be judged by mother, but I want to seek approval from mother, and all of that. And then, you know, it seems to me it came later that I was able to reflect on what her life must have felt like for her. And, you know, some sadness that I didn't acknowledge that more with her when she was still living. But bottom line is I'm incredibly grateful. You know, I'm here because of my mother, and a lot of my personality is who I am because of the influence that she had on me. And she was strong and just, you know, a lovely, wonderful person. And so I'm very grateful to my mom today, and frequently I think of her fondly. And so a few people have agreed in advance to speak next, you know, just so that we can get this rolling. So I'm going to have Andy Walker speak next, and then after him it will be Kayla Chilo, and then after that it'll be whoever raises their hand. Okay, so Andy, let's go to Andy. All right, does anybody see Andy? Kayla, why don't we go to you? And then if Andy's back on, he can go after you.
You have to unmute me.
Oh, we hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Because I tried to unmute myself and it didn't work. Well, good morning, everyone, and happy Mother's Day. Thanks for asking me to speak, Dilith. Clearly long ago, this day started out specifically as a way to honor our mothers, our biological moms and our adoptive moms. And on this day, we can even honor our aunts, grandmothers, and mothers-in-law. This morning, though, I invite you to consider other women in your lives who were not your mothers per se, but other women who nonetheless served nurturing, loving, mother-like roles, and thus who had a positive influence on you. They don't necessarily get recognized for the love, nurturing, warmth, encouragement, and acceptance that they give. And yet their role is so important in shaping who we will become. You are lucky indeed if you have had a great relationship with your real mom. And you are luckier still if you had other loving mother figures around you. But sadly, not everyone had the Hallmark card image of the idealized mother. And so other women who gave us love and acceptance play a vital role in our lives. This person might be a teacher, one of your mother's friends, a neighbor, the mother of your best friend in high school, your childhood piano, violin, or ballet teacher. It could be anyone in your personal sphere. I had two such special women in my life who were very important influences on me. And though I can only give you a glimpse into their wonderful influence, I am still blessed by the huge impact each had on my life. One was my Aunt Irene. She was my mother's baby sister. She loved me in ways my mom didn't. And I learned how to be a strong woman from her and so much more. By her example, I learned that others' opinions of me are none of my business because the only thing that mattered is what I thought of myself. The other special woman was my German mom. When I was in high school, I was an exchange student in Germany. And my Mutti is like mom in German, her name was Paula Neikes. Boy, she was the best. In many ways, she was like an angel to me. She was kind and gentle, accepting, patient, and calm. She loved to laugh and have fun. At age 50-something, she was more physically fit than I was at 17. And I wanted to be just like her in so many ways. In fact, I think today when I look back today, she is the primary influence of why I have remained physically fit. She was my best role mom for being a mom. I loved her and I knew she loved me. Both my Aunt Irene and my Mutti were significant role models on how to be a woman. And after my time in Germany, my Mutti and I remained in contact for the next 30 years via letters, phone calls, and my visits back to Germany whenever I could get there. Until she died, she never missed my birthday, and she always called me her daughter. Now on this day dedicated to moms, I hope you will consider honoring others who were not technically your mom, but who loved and cared for you or otherwise influenced you in ways that enriched your lives. Let's not let these women go unnoticed and unappreciated today. Even if they are no longer with us, we can still honor them in our hearts. And on the kind of like the flip side of this, if you are not a mom per se, don't underestimate how you may have been a warm and mothering influence on others around you. And even if you may not know it, someone is probably appreciating you so much today. And just one other little tag on, because I have a special love for animals. All of you who love and nurture animals, who rescue animals, who support animal welfare foundations, thank you for your mothering influence on the animal world. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you, Kayla. That was beautiful. Thank you. And now Andy is with us, and we're going to hear from Andy Walker.
Hi everyone. So when I went to write this, it was amazing how fast it came out. So Here we go. One of the things I remember most about my mom is she was an amazing cook, and I mean that for real. Like we always had birthday German chocolate cakes made from scratch, and she would make these wonderful Christmas cookies and chocolates, and they were so good. Like one year I mailed some to a friend of mine in Japan, and I didn't even think about it, but he went like crazy, and he was like, the next Christmas, he's like, mail me cookies, mail me your mother's cookies. And I thought about it, and I'm like, you know, we should like put a kiosk in the mall and sell my mother's homemade cookies, or even have an online store. And so that's how good they were. And my mom had a good way of making holidays really special. Every Christmas, we got a unique ornament. It was like she made it, or an artist made it, or it had some kind of special meaning. Like it could be like a stack of books from Hallmark, but it would be for me because I like reading books. So it was about like who you were. And I have all those ornaments, and I have so many of those ornaments because I'm older now, that I took my regular ornaments and I gave them to Interfaith. So because I filled up the tree with all my special ornaments for my mom. So, you know, when you look at the Interfaith tree, a lot of those round bulbs on Interfaith are actually ones that I gave away that were just generic bulbs that I didn't have room for because I have so many special ornaments for my mom. So we would have amazing Thanksgiving and other holiday meals. And even my dad said about after their divorce, what an amazing cook she was. So that's a pretty good thing to come out of my dad, you know, after they've been divorced. And, you know, I thought about like what Della said, and recently I'm the same way. I started to think about what was her life to her, you know, like from her point of view, because I never thought about that as a kid. And she passed away almost 11 years now ago. And you know, I thought about it when I was in K-12, somebody cleaned the shower, the bathroom. Okay, there was never mold in our shower, and it wasn't me. And someone did my laundry. I didn't do my laundry in K-12, but it was done. And I didn't go grocery shopping when I was in K-12. And again, someone cooked amazing meals every day. My mom always had a full-time job as well, so that's pretty amazing. So I think she gave us unconditional love, and she gave us a home. And in a lot of ways, she was the best mom in the world. And she actually loved being a mom. That's all she wanted to be. And I want to end on something. So my brother and I were like less than 2 years apart, and we fought really hard, like all our lives, for real, physically, verbally, everything. We fought hard, you know, cats and dogs. And I would always tell my mom about the horrible things that he did to me. And he did do horrible things to me. And I would tell her, and no matter what I told her, she would never say a bad thing about my brother. And it used to make me really mad because I'd be like, you know, he did this horrible thing. And she would never say anything bad about him. And I think now that I know that, you know, that was just her unconditional love for her children. And she was never going to say anything bad or be upset about one of her children. So that's it.
Thank you, Andy. That was delightful. Just beautiful. Thanks. Anne Marie House would like to go.
Okay. This morning, when I went to post a picture of my mom on Facebook, there was one of my mother and her 6 children, me being the youngest. And in the background, there was just a bunch, it was taken outside, and there were just a bunch of pine trees in the background and just bare ground. And because it's even colder where I grew up in Lake Placid, New York, than it is here. So the ground was probably still frozen. We all had on our hats and our little jackets, and I think it was probably taken after Easter Sunday, and the picture was taken by my dad. But I was reminded that this was taken on the property of the house that I grew up in, and and just how, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm getting emotional, and just how fortunate I was that I only have memories of that one house. you know, we bought the property my dad bought the property when I was just a baby, and he built the house, and I grew up in that house. And then when my dad died, we stayed in that house. It was just my sister and my mom and I left. And I know that it was very hard on my mom, and she was so depressed when my dad died, but she managed to hold it together, you know, and we grew up there, and there was always room for me in that house, no matter which one of her children went home, to stay for however period of time we wanted. There was always room for us there, you know. And then when she passed, you know, we sold the house, and I remember that she always made homemade cookies, and we would go over to my Aunt Mary's to visit, and Aunt Mary would give us store-bought cookies, and I thought it was because she was rich, you know, that she could afford these store-bought cookies. And in hindsight, I realized how rich we were, because we got these homemade cookies, and what I wouldn't give today for one of Mom's peanut butter cookies. They were just fabulous. And you know, when Delith was talking about the red geraniums, that was my mom's favorite too. And that's often what we got her for a gift. She didn't ask for much, but it was, I don't even remember if we got her a card, but she loved her flowers and her red geraniums and her African violets, which I share that love of today. I don't know, you know, there was a time when I was in my maybe 20s, 30s that I wish that I was thinking Mom wasn't perfect. I wish that she was stricter with us, had provided more guidance, but her mom was really, really strict. And so she kind of went the other direction. And instead of, when we went out on dates, instead of her firmly telling our date, you must get her home by 10, she kind of left it up to us. And if we didn't come in at a decent time, she would say the next day, why did you come in so late last night? You worried me. So she taught us to be self-disciplined, and I didn't realize it until recently, actually, that, you know, and she made me the person I am. I don't think she did such a bad job. You know, above everything else, I know that her mom always put her children first. She always said that my children are my life. And I've never had children, so I don't understand that kind of love for your children. But I appreciated Kayla mentioning cats, because I do have 2 cats, and I'm always hugging them and kissing them and telling them how wonderful they are. So, so happy Mother's Day to everyone. And I hope that you had as wonderful a mom and as fond memories growing up as what I've had.
Thank you, Anne Marie. That was just sweet, very sweet, wonderful memories. Thanks. Let's see. We have Brett Kuhn and Heidi and John Lang. The 3 of those have indicated they'd like to speak. So let's go to Brett first.
I'm on. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Happy Mother's Day. I feel a bit emotional. My mom is 82, and she's on the other side of the state over in South Haven with the rest of my family who are gathering today, but we just didn't feel comfortable. We thought maybe we're going to be raining. It's going to be a little cool today, and to go outside. So my relationship with my mom wasn't always that great growing up. There was a period of time where I thought, you know, I really don't know if I care if I keep in touch with my mom or not. And as I continue to practice forgiveness with myself and others, I began to realize that my mom was the perfect teacher for me in so many ways, because for one thing, and to this day, 82 years old, and she her love has just been so unconditional. She's always been there for me and for Laura and for my son. And I see the same thing with my wife, Laura, too. She is such a loving, compassionate person. She has such a generous heart and a kindness about her. Things to me that are so needed in this world, this mothering energy, this energy of nurturing, this energy of just really treating people with love and respect. And my teacher, Maharishi Sadashiva Asham, said probably 25, 30 years ago that if this world is to awaken, then if humanity is to awaken, then it has to include Ashani, which is the feminine energy. There's no other way around it. And that energy is so needed today because we need the nurturing, we need the love, we need the compassion that women have been a lot better about bringing in this world than men have. And that's not to say men can't bring it, but it's so needed. And I'll also say something that the Dalai Lama tweeted, and he said he would just assume that all world leaders be women because he knows that there would be peace, more peace in this world. So, for me, I'm tremendously grateful for moms and women in general, just for that nurturing and the compassion that they bring into my life, into the world. I'm truly a better person for that. And for all of you moms and women, thank you so much for everything that you brought to this world. Namaste.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you so much. Heidi Kaminsky. Let's have you.
Hi. First of all, happy Mother's Day to all of you. And Kayla, unfortunately, my mother, who was also a Muji, was not the person who nurtured me. But she did teach me how to be a good mom by modeling how not to be one. And today, I would like to honor my children, actually, because I feel like the luckiest mom on earth with my 3 children. For example, Tommy and I have now been cooped up for 2 months? I lost track of time. But anyways, yesterday, an incident triggered for all my frustrations over the current situation that have been building up over the last whatever time it has been. It triggered that I had a big meltdown. And Tommy just calmly rolled his eyes, remedied the trigger, and put me back to being my happy-go-lucky self. And 3 of my children always manage to make me happy again whenever I feel sad. So I must have done a pretty good job, but that's why I would like to honor them, because they show me how much they love me every day.
Yeah. Beautiful. I agree. My children too are just such a gift, and it goes both ways, on this day. Thank you. John Lang. Let's go over to John. Okay, John.
Oh, now I'm unmuted. Well, happy Mother's Day to everyone.
Thank you.
My mother passed away Thanksgiving in 2001. And it wasn't easy, and it was protracted. But I visited her quite frequently last summer and fall. And I went down the day after 9/11. And what I was struck by was how much compassion at that point, when, she was within a couple of months of passing away. But she had so much compassion for the people that died on that day. And so I return to that now, in this moment. And when I struggle, I think about having compassion for all the people who are suffering. And it was a lesson that she gave me. She was a very direct Midwesterner and always refused to look at the bad in any situation, including her own death. So anyways, she visited me this morning in a dream, and it didn't make any sense, but she did visit me, and you know, I guess I waver, but the lesson that she taught me is to return back to optimism and compassion.
Mm.
So I carry that with me. That was her gift. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you for that beautiful message. Randall Counts would like to speak next. We'll go over to Randall.
There we go. So I brought a picture of my mom with me today so she could be here for Mother's Day. This was in 2012. She was about 86. This was our last trip to the UP as a family. My mom was pretty amazing in that she was very sharp-minded, very witty, very humorous. I think my sense of humor really comes from her and my artistic nature too. And one of the things about my mother was I felt that I could talk to her about anything, taboo subjects, everything. And even though she would express her opinion and totally disagree with me to the point where she would think that I was absolutely full of dung, I did not feel unloved when that happened. But I think that was very helpful for me in learning how to navigate the world and to have somebody that I felt accepted me in spite of the fact that she disagreed with me on things. And she didn't always disagree with me, but that I could confide in her. It really helped me a lot, and I really miss her in many ways. And when she passed, and she died of a stroke in 2017, and then my dad died. So she died in January of 2017. My dad died in December of 2017. So when I was cleaning out the house, I saved this, and this is on my phone, and I listen to it frequently, and I just want to share it with you.
You're unable to come to the phone at this moment. Please leave your name and number, and we will get back to you. Thank you.
Could you hear that? That was my mom's voice on the answering machine. Oh, well.
Thank you.
Over and out.
Thanks, Randall. And I had the blessing of knowing Randall's mom for quite a few years. And soon after I met her, that was around 2011 maybe, she knew that my mom had passed away, and you know how much I missed my mom. And she said, "It's all right, I'll be your mom now." And she was just so sweet and generous and loving. So thank you. All right. Anyone else? I don't see any other hands. Who else would like to share a few words?
Marilyn is waving at the camera.
Marilyn. All right. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Hold on. Stand by, Marilyn. We'll unmute you. Oh, you got it. You should be live.
First of all, I'll show you a picture. I don't know if you can see it or not, but
Back it up.
Oh, there we go.
that is my mother and I
Oh,
in 97. Here in Ann Arbor, I think it was. There, have I got it?
Yep.
mm-hmm. Yep.
The first thing and the last thing that I remember about my mother is her telling me she loved me. When she died at almost 101, she reached up and put her arm around me, and she pulled me down, and she whispered, "I love you." And it was just a few hours after that that she very peacefully died. And I think women in our family, going back at least to my grandmother's generation, have been in the minority. There have been a lot of boys. For example, I had only brothers and only sons. My mother had only brothers. She had one daughter and two sons. And so on back through a couple of generations on both sides of the family. As a result, women learned to be strong, but also were supported because we were kind of an oddity. But my grandmother and my mother were both educated. Even my grandmother went to university back before the 1900s, which was quite a rarity. My mother was proudly a voter just a few years before I was born. She, all of her life, was involved in helping other people in some way. She supervised mentally retarded people in a facility. She taught the blind in a school for the blind. She could do anything with her hands. I mean, in terms of crochet or embroidery, or she tried doing photography using light techniques. And she was a vital person. She what some people would have called her critical, but I never felt her being critical of me, because she called to attention one of the things that I had done. I usually deserved having her call me that to my attention, but she didn't do it to shame me or to punish me, but only to make me aware of how my malfeasance affected other people. And I can think of her with the utmost acceptance and love. She was divorced when she divorced, I should say, in a time when women didn't divorce. And it wasn't because she and my father were contentious, but because his feet were generally, his head was generally in the clouds and her feet were generally on the ground. But both remarried, both had very successful marriages. I had two fathers, actually, and two mothers. The other mother she was not unkind, but she was just not, I was too old for her to be part of my life. But when my second father, my stepfather, I hate that word, died, and my father's wife had died, my mother, knowing he would be alone and with no romantic involvement or intention at all, would invite him, because she knew he'd be lonely, to come to our house for Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, and included him in a way that expressed, again, that love is all around and always. And I remember her with the greatest affection. And I always felt loved by her. And I remember her today with a great deal of love. Great deal.
Thank you, Marilyn. What a lovely, inspiring story. It's beautiful. Now I can see why you are who you are. Beautiful. All right, Lindsay Passmore would like to speak.
This is such a sweet service. I so enjoy hearing everybody's stories. Mm-hmm. And I've been kind of inspired by Kayla and by you, Della, to talk about other women in my life. I too had a foreign exchange mom in Denmark, and she's my mor. And my parents were divorced when I was 11. And so from then I was raised by a single mom who in many ways is still my role model. But it was very complicated just because of the demands on her and her ambitions, and a lot of that filtered down to my sister and I, just the stresses of raising daughters and as a single mom. And when I went to Denmark, I moved back into a nuclear family, and my mom there, my mor, was really just an inspired, dynamic, energetic, very loving head of the family, clearly. And she even when I was at the 12-day language school that started us out on our program, I got like 4 letters from her, long, attentive, detailed letters. And, you know, she really enveloped me and embraced me and brought me into that family. And I was a really different personality from my host sister. And my mor was really the glue. And, you know, by the end of my stay, my host sister and I were really close and had just deep affection for each other. But my mor, she, you know, in Danish is a very odd language, and a lot of people who come to Denmark as exchange students, their families are excited to speak English with the exchange student and practice their English. But my mor always said, you know, you'll have a better experience if you learn the language. And she made me read from the newspaper every day. And I really got good at Danish, and people were amazed that, you know, I was new in the country by the time I was there for a year. I mean, they just couldn't believe it. And it was because of her. And she was really fun. And so it was such a different experience than being raised by a single mom who, you know, was exhausted and cranky and, you know, didn't have much. She was very much focused on what she needed after the divorce. And I also want to just, my mother-in-law, even though my former husband and I are now divorced, I look back and I realize I married him partly for his parents, you know, and I think that happens sometimes. And so my mother-in-law, Barbara, is just a wise, unconditionally loving sage who just welcomed me from the moment that he and I started dating. And the first time we visited his parents, they put us up on the coast of New Jersey. They lived in the Philadelphia area in a little seaside room and took us to an outdoor James Taylor concert. I mean, I really hit the jackpot with my in-laws, and I really am so grateful for her. And I'm grateful for my mom too, whose spirituality and spiritual seeking really put me on a path. But I got a very pure, sweet kind of mothering, and a wise and complicated mothering. And that's the way it is. Yeah.
Thank you, Lindsay. That was great. And it's just, you know, just the message that so many people are mothering to us. And, you know, and it's not just dependent on one person, thank goodness. So it's certainly very rich to have so many lovely role models and loving people in our lives. Does anyone else want to share? Mary Alice, go ahead. Can't hear you, Mary Alice.
Oh, found it. I accidentally hit the mute button on my phone. Sorry. have a lot of role models of mothers in my life, and over the last 7 years of attending Interfaith, I would say that any of you that I have had a heart-to-heart with fills that place. There are so many different versions of nurturance and mothering, and I've loved hearing all of the stories today, and I would write a novel of how much I love and appreciate my mother and my grandmother for everything that they've done, but I think you all might know. But I want to take a moment to acknowledge my cousin, Aslan. She just gave birth 2 days ago, and her father was my Uncle Kenny, who passed away in 2018. And he was the last person of my grandfather's lineage that was going to pass on the name. And so Aslan named her son Lawson, which is our last name, Law. So she passed this on, and we all found out about that, and it was just incredibly moving and potent. And then she gave her father's last name as his middle name. And so there's a lot that can be said about names, whether you're given it or you choose it, and that takes incredible strength to go through something like that when you don't have a parent. And I also want to give energy and support and hope that you can hold space for my very good friend of 23 years now, and she's pregnant. We agreed a long time ago that she was going to have the kids for both of us. And she's having her first child at the end of June. So she's very close, and plans are shifting, changing because of the state of the world. But she was telling me, we always share ancient readings that we've done, and she was sharing about how she has found in several different ancient traditions that the state of when the baby's head first crowns is called the ring of fire. And so it's this cosmic portal, and but it's given the element of fire. And so in thinking about fire being the very first element of starting life, I just want to share that all with you. And let's surround her in light and protection, and her baby and her family. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary Alice. Beautiful. We're going to have Bob speak next, and I'm now looking at the time and realize this should probably be our last one. So go ahead, Bob. I'll unmute you. Go ahead.
I'll try to keep it brief. I've been talking to people lately about how it often seems like I have something to say at these services. And, I don't really plan it. It's just I'm very reactive to what I hear. And I thought, my mother's, with whom I had a really great relationship, died in 1998, and I haven't been a father, therefore there's been no woman in my life with whom to celebrate their motherhood. So I thought I have nothing much to say about motherhood, but I want to thank Kayla and Delith and Lindsay in particular for helping me to see there's really, there's a lot of women that I've encountered in my life that are mothers, and not always to me, but there's two special women that have been bosses running small companies I've worked for, and one of them died in the 2010s, and one of them is my current boss. I really appreciate the motherly influence they've played over all their employees. But I wouldn't stop there. I mean, I think what I got from today's lesson is maybe it broadened my vision to look for mothering in other people. It may not be toward me, but seeing it in actuality, seeing it in expression, wherever it may arise, feels like a new awareness. And for years, I think I felt sort of ambivalent, if not almost negative about Mother's Day, because I felt like there was no mother I could celebrate. But the idea that I was going to be bereft, if you will, on Mother's Day because there was no one in my life intimate to me that I could celebrate just kind of exploded today. I really appreciate that you helped me to focus on mothers everywhere. And I guess I'll close by saying I really want to express gratitude to everybody that spoke today, and a fresh commitment to appreciate all the mothers among you as I see you enacting your roles. I guess I want to also mention Heidi, because she mothers our children along with Kelly on a regular basis. And I've always seen her as a great mother to her own children. So it's not too surprising that she decides to honor her children today, because she does that so consistently. It feels like she's been very out there about how she's treating her children and how she's interacting with them. I've seen some signs of struggles, like I've been around long enough to remember when Tommy wasn't the great guy she described today. He took some forbearance when he was younger, and she definitely showed it. So anyway, I just want to celebrate all the mothers, and thank you so much for helping me to drop my blinders. It feels like my whole life has been one of, lately, of dropping my blinders and seeing with more wisdom and more breadth. So thank you all for helping me today to do that.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Thank you, Bob. And that was a wonderful wrap up. This was just really heartwarming and heart opening. And I would have loved to hear everybody's story, because we all have just wonderful stories to tell. I'll turn it back to Lyriel now.